morning. There we go. I know you guys are enjoying each other and enjoying your talk and your coffee and everything, and that's wonderful. We're kind of spread all over here this morning, but that's fine. Jerry asked if I would introduce our guest speaker today. He's someone I know and someone you know I know. So Randy and Sarah, Randy's our oldest child. They spent 20 years in Brazil, more or less, and now he works as the international director for what ABWE calls Good Soil Evangelism and Discipleship. I know Pastor Dan and Jerry were down and took the Good Soil Evangelism and Discipleship course, and we do our Roots of Faith here, which is all part of that. But when we were developing this at ABWE, we began to see missionaries all over the world use this in presenting the gospel chronologically and putting the content of the gospel in the context of a biblical worldview. Rather than trying just simply to get decisions, we said we need to be making disciples. We need people to understand, embrace, and cling to the gospel. And so as this stuff was developed, we began to see it used all over the world very effectively in teaching people the true meaning of being a follower of Jesus Christ. Well, Randy works in that full-time now, and he's going to share with us during this time the ministry that he's doing so we can have a better understanding of how to pray for him.
Yeah? Are we ready? So Dad already gave half of what I was going to talk about, so I can, no, I'm just kidding. So Good Soil Evangelism and Discipleship, we have the pleasure of serving there. Before I get into it more, though, we're going to play a little game to start with, okay? So here's the deal. It's called Whose Tagline, okay? So I'm going to give a tagline up here for a company, and if you think you know it, raise your hand. If you're for the first one, raise your hand and get it right. My lovely assistant here, you actually get a prize this morning. Are you ready, lovely assistant?
No, I'm disciplining our child.
We'll get into that later, too. Okay, are you ready? So, here we go. Anybody know what tagline? Huh? No. I'll give you a clue. It's an athletic company. Huh? Not Nike. Adidas is right. Okay. Dad doesn't need one. So, it's Adidas. Man, this next one's easier, I hope. Are you ready? American by birth, rebel by choice. Man. Harley Davidson is correct. Just imagine. Not Nike. Huh? Let me get it? Legos. Okay. Man. Let's go places. No, but it's close. Toyota is correct. We got one here. All right. Nice job. Toyota. Think different. Huh? Apple is correct. Sarah Apple over here. Yeah, we know. Quality never goes out of style. Some of you may be wearing it. No. Not Hanes, but think one layer further. Levi's is correct. Quality never goes out of style is Levi's. Okay, see what's next. Not Google, but it's not Yahoo. Think of seeing, watching, close. Netflix. The last group I did this with knew a little more than you guys. I'm just going to be honest, okay? The best things come to those who wait. This one's a classic. Come on. You pour and you wait and you wait and you wait. Huh? Heinz ketchup is correct. There are two people. So Heinz. Confidence in motion. It's close. BMW is the ultimate driving machine. That's close too. Think of another one when you think of driving and safety. What are you guessing for?
I don't know.
Subaru. Okay, here's the last one. Are you ready? I hope you get this one. It's close. What's the big thing? What do we serve with? Good soil. Okay, so it's good soil. So our task at Good Soil, what we're doing is we're trying to help people clearly understand, genuinely embrace, and firmly hold on to the gospel. Okay? So our purpose, right, what we do as Good Soil at ABWE is we're motivating people, we're training people, and we're resourcing people in worldview relevant evangelism and discipleship. As beginning in February of this year, at the beginning of February, I moved from just being the Midwest director for Good Soil here in the United States to now I am the overseas director of Good Soil Evangelism and Discipleship. What does that mean? Well, that means that most of what I do is focused on overseas. I still do lots, and I'll share some here in the States as well. But my primary task is to work with those that we're working with overseas and develop things for overseas. So one of the things that I get to do is I get to mobilize partners. So we have partners that are national partners. We have partners that are missionary partners. The guy there in the middle is one of our key partners. He is in the Philippines. His name is Ariel Abadiano. And Ariel is one of our Good Soil champions. In fact, he does more Good Soil trainings a year now than ABWE does. He is the busiest man I've ever seen. He's always doing something, and sometimes he's doing online training at 5 a.m. because he does training with people in the Philippines, with training with people in Myanmar, Dubai, Thailand, all over the world he's doing that. And so I have part of my task and part of what I get to do is I get to help encourage them and make sure they have the tools and the resources that they need. And I even just recently was able to raise some money for one of the translation projects that he's working on there in the Philippines. And so I get to work with amazing people like Ariel. And we'll share a little bit. He's working with other people, but really through his ministry there and the people that he's trained and the people that are now working in Good Soil all over Southeast Asia there are hundreds of people every year coming to the Lord through Good Soil and the resources that are there. It's pretty exciting. And Ariel's doing a great job. We're going to hopefully see him in August. He's hosting in Thailand, not in the Philippines, but in Thailand. We're going to have our international summit where we got our missionaries and partners coming from all over the world, and we'll be meeting there in Thailand. So one of the things I get to do is mobilize partners. Another thing I do is training itself, or training for missionaries and nationals. It's been a while since I've been able to go overseas because of COVID. The last two that I did were February of last year, I was in Brazil, and the December before that of Christmas, December of 2019 now, I was in Colombia, training a number of missionaries and nationals there. Most of what I do when I'm talking with them now is online. I have the opportunity, we just met with our partner in Poland, and 2 hours Zoom meeting with him, and so being able to encourage them that way. But I am going to be able to travel again next year, and I'll share with you here in a little bit where my next travels are that I'm going to be able to go to. But training missionaries and nationals also part of all the training that we do at ABWE. So I usually drive out to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania from Grand Rapids. We're in the Grand Rapids area there. about 5 times a year. I take the 9.5-hour trip out there, spend a week or a little bit more, and then drive that back. But we have the opportunity to do that. And then the other big thing that we do as overseas directors, I'm in charge of all our translation projects that we're involved in. So right now, Good Soil Resources are now in 39 languages around the world. And I've shared some of those in prayer letters. So since you didn't get the taglines, I'll give you another opportunity. What's one of the languages that we have translated this year? You can just guess a language, and if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, you're right, right? So just this year, Tagalog is one of them. Yep, so Tagalog is one of the primary languages spoken in the Philippines. In fact, in the Philippines, a lot of the training happens in English. And so up until this point, Ariel has been mostly translating in English, but just this year they finished Tagalog is one of the main languages that they work with. And now that girl that was in that picture that I showed you that was on his right, she was holding one of the new copies of the Good Soil in Tagalog. And so they're pretty excited about that. Anybody else want to give a guess? Thai is another one. And so part of the idea behind the international summit, the reason that we picked Thailand and do it in Thailand is Ariel is also behind this project, been translating it into Thai so that when we go there to do the international summit, before we all meet together that week, and before actually we're going to be training missionaries and national Thai workers in the Good Soil Evangelism and Discipleship Seminar, and then be able to give them those resources that they'll be using in their own language there in Thailand. So we're pretty excited about that. Huh? Nope, not one. No. But good guess. Arabic is on one of these lists that I'm going to show you, but we haven't done it yet. Hungarian. It's actually already in Hungarian. So these are the languages that we've done this year. So Aringa is one of the tribal languages in Uganda. It's actually in the north part of Uganda. And the interesting thing about the Aringa translation is we translated the story of hope, actually the message of hope, because the Aringa tribe is mostly Muslim. And so the message of hope, if you look back on our tables back there, we have some of our resources. You'll notice there's the story of hope and the message of hope. The message of hope was developed specifically to reach Muslims. And so it has a few different stories in there because of who the Muslims revere. Like Jonah isn't in our original one, it's in that one, and a couple other ones that kind of really point to Jesus being God's son. And so we translated the message of hope, but we translated the message of hope into Aringa, but they don't even have the whole Bible in their language yet. They only have the New Testament. And so the translators who translated the message of hope, also then the passages that we use for the Old Testament, they had to translate those passages. So now they have that part of the Old Testament in their language, at least the part that they'll be reading to understand God's plan of redemption through Scripture. Thai, we'd mentioned. Japanese is just being finished. We've got both the story of hope and the way to joy, which is the discipleship, translated into Japanese. They're doing edits now on that. And Tokyo, Japan is one of 7 areas that in the next 7 years, ABW wants to focus on to reach for the gospel. So they have 7 major areas that they're focusing on. The only one that we know about right now, they haven't come out with that list yet. They're coming out here later this year, but we knew that Japan was going to be on there, that Tokyo was going to be on there. So we got ahead of that and got that done in Japanese. Luganda is another tribal language there in Uganda, where one of our missionaries works. And then Tagalog, which was mentioned. Bari is another tribal language there in Africa. And then Mongolian, I put that on there. We'd had the story of hope in Mongolian, but Mongolian has become only the 3rd language that now they translated the whole Roots of Faith curriculum. And so the Roots of Faith, as you know, is 100 lessons, right? There's 50 in the old, 50 in the new. You guys have been studying it here in Sunday school. It takes about a whole year to go through, right? If you do in Sunday school, we teach it in a whole week, 40-hour class, just the old, and then another whole week, the new. So it's a lot, but a missionary couple had come to the training there at ABWE. They were with another mission, but they were going to Mongolia and starting a Bible school. And they decided that the Roots of Faith was going to be the basis of how they were going to teach their students there. And so they spent 2 years before they left translating all of the Roots of Faith into Mongolian. So now Mongolian, Portuguese, and Spanish are the 3 languages that have the Roots of Faith translated into it. And then the last one on there is Farsi. So does anybody know where Farsi is spoken? Huh? Iran. Yep, Iran. So we're excited about this, and I'll share in just a second the next slide why Farsi, that we're excited that we translated into Farsi. I'll share a story about that. So these are the ones then now that are on the horizon, that we have people that have committed that they're going to translate these. So Indonesian, for Indonesia, Cebuano is the other major tribal language in the Philippines. There's Tagalog, and then there's Cebuano. So that's the one that Ariel is working on next. And one of our churches in Ohio just gave $2,000 towards that project. Arabic is actually the same missionary in Uganda that translated Aringa, has contacts across the border in South Sudan, and there they speak Sudanese Arabic, and so he wants to translate it into Arabic. Lahu is one of the tribal languages in Thailand where we'll be going, and then Swahili is an African language, and Amharic is the language that is spoken primarily in Ethiopia. And so we have contacts there that are beginning to translate it into that. So I get to oversee, I don't do any of the translation, thankfully, but I get to oversee all the translation, everything that's going on. We have people that work under us that do all the technical part. You can pray about that. The 2 gals that have been working part-time for us through the past couple of years, doing the InDesign part. So what happens is when we get ready to translate, we have what's called a text for translation document. So we send them a document where it has the English and they can put their language in. And then most of the time, unless they have somebody that knows InDesign in their country, they send it back to us. And then we put it into what's called InDesign, the program, so that then we send it back to them so that they can print it. And it's already in print form. So the 2 girls that were working for us are now done. They were both working just part-time, and their full-time jobs became too much. So you can pray. We're kind of scrambling to find people to do that for us. And it looks like we have, but we're working through that. You can pray about that. So a few stories about what's going on in the Good Soil world. Reaching Iraqis in Quito. So John Lennon was a former missionary with ABWE, still partners with our missionaries there. He began being exposed to Iranians who had come from Iran and were living in Quito, Ecuador, and began sharing the gospel with them. And he just had kind of a beta version, photocopies of the message of hope in Farsi, and began sharing that with them. Even during COVID, they were doing it online, and he began to see dozens of them come to make faith responses to the gospel. In fact, just this year, they have baptized over 30 Iranians there in Quito, Ecuador. To the point where there is now a church there. They were growing so fast, an Iranian pastor from Canada has moved down to Quito, Ecuador to pastor the church there. And so we got those printed in time for John was here on furlough, and he took 100 copies of those back with him when he went. And they're excited to be using that. But he's had Iranians come to Quito, Ecuador on vacation because they've heard from family members there that they can hear the gospel and they can get a Bible in their own language and hear about Jesus in their own language. And so it's pretty exciting what God's doing there. So we were excited to get that in Farsi. We also have a separate website. We have our website that's Good Soil, but we have a separate one that's called Sow and Harvest. And what it is it's one that's not associated with ABWE. so that we can put some more sensitive content on that for sensitive parts of the world. So right now there's just 2 things on there. There's the story of hope in Chinese, and now there's the message of hope in Farsi. And he has contacts now with people that are living in Iran, and they can go and they can access that without being associated with ABWE and having all that problem. They can download it for free, the message of hope in Farsi, and use it there in their countries there. Another story to share with you. Many of you know we served in Brazil for 18 years and church planting there. In our last church plant, we had started the coffee shop, and Aaron there on the top picture on the left is our colleague that we started with, and she's been using the story of hope. And one of those that she started sharing with, her name is Marcella. So Marcella went to the university, came from São Paulo to come to our state and went to the university there, really struggling with loneliness, didn't know very many people. She lived in apartments that were by our place, which is far from the center. And so she started coming into the hangout there, to our coffee shop, and spent 4 to 5 hours a day in there and would do her homework in there, and just Aaron developed a relationship with her. And then one of the guys, one of the students that got saved through our ministry there, who's from Angola, invited her to start coming to their Sunday study. She came 1 week, and they were just starting to study the roots of faith there as well, and then COVID hit. And so they were closed for over a year with no services. And so during that time, Aaron invited her to do the story of hope together with her. And it was so strict at the time, they couldn't meet, they couldn't do it. So they started the story of hope by studying it on WhatsApp over their phone and went through it. And she'd been studying through it. And on this past September 7th is Independence Day in Brazil. And they hadn't finished it. Things had happened, and they had about 6 lessons left to go. So she invited Marcella over for that day, and they finished it, and she gave her life to Christ. And so that was exciting to see. And so Aaron's had the numerous opportunities, several university students that she has taken through the story of hope now, and that they have put their faith and trust in Jesus Christ by understanding the gospel that way. This is Daniel and Jennifer Mee. They work in Colombia. Bogota, Colombia is where the church plant is there that they work. Then they actually live about an hour and a half up in the mountains near where the seminary is there. He teaches in the seminary. But this new church plant that they started there in Bogota, they decided that good soil was going to be the DNA of their church. And so everybody who comes and starts going, the first thing that they do is they study the story of hope with them. And then once they've made a faith response to the gospel, they take them through the way to joy. And everybody in the church that has made faith responses, then the goal and expectation is that they're going to take somebody through the way to joy after they've gone the way to joy. When I was there visiting in December of 2019, I was walking around the church and walked in the room and walked in, and the mother of the pastor, 82 years old, was in there, and she was taking this 35-year-old lady through the way to joy. And then they have a third class, which is the seminar itself, which they teach in. So they have different Sunday school classes. Some are studying the story of hope, some are studying the way to joy, and then some are doing the seminar itself. And they've seen God grow in that way. But then COVID hit for them as well, right? So Dan decided, you know what? I'm going to offer to do the story of hope on a Zoom with anybody who wants. And so, he thought maybe I can get 5 to 10 people who will do the story of hope with me on Zoom. So the first week that they opened it up, they had 70 people that met on Zoom to study the story of hope. And he said, as you went through and they did the 20 weeks or so that they took to go through it, that number dropped to about 35, but he said it's still pretty good. And of those, 15 of them made a faith response to the gospel. The first Sunday that they were open after a year and a half of being closed there in Colombia, he said there were 7 people from that story of hope thing that were there on that Sunday and have continued. He said it was kind of funny because we went to, it's like oh, I know you, but I don't really know you because I've only ever seen you online. And, but it's been a great fellowship. But so they decided it's the best response they've ever had in outreach. So they said, you know what? Let's plant our new church this way. So they got all the context because they knew the next neighborhood that they wanted to plant a church in. So they got all their context from that, invited them to come to a Zoom Bible study while COVID was still going on, did that with them, and now they have a group of about 20 people in that new area that once things open up all the way, they're going to say, you know what, there's too many people at this church, we need to plant a new church. You know what, all you 20 people, you live in that area over there, let's start a new church with you guys. So they're pretty excited about that. Another fun story, in Ukraine, way back, we partnered with what's called Church Ministries Institute, started a Bible school there in Ukraine, ABW missionaries did. And now it's completely led by Ukrainians. It's all national. And they use the story of hope and train in good soil. And so they were starting a new campus, kind of. They have campuses all over Ukraine, but they had contacts with a few small Baptist churches in Armenia and wanted to start a Bible school there. And so they took good soil there. They went through the whole process. They themselves translated it, took all the materials there and into Armenia. So I don't know what you know about Armenia, but Armenia is the first country in the world to call itself a Christian nation. Way back in the early few hundred years, it became a Christian nation. And it's known as a Christian nation, but it's the Armenian church there over the years has lost the gospel. So for them, it's a cultural identity thing, right? They think, well, I'm Armenian, so I'm a Christian. And the Armenian church doesn't preach the gospel anymore. In fact, they don't even read the Bible in their services. So they're excited to be able, but the good thing is they believe the Bible, so they're willing to study it. And so to have it now in the Armenian language is something that's pretty exciting. So I'm happy to report that after being here in the States for many months, I now have my first international trips planned that I get to go. And so the first one is in January of 2022. I'm going to be going to the country of Zambia. So our executive director for Africa, his name's Ron Washer. And last year he called me, he said, Randy, I really want to promote good soil more in Africa. And so that's kind of been our focus these months, getting ready for that. In Zambia, we have one of our missionaries that's there that is on the board of an African university there. It's called Ambassador International University. And so the first 2 weeks of Zambia, we're going to be traveling there. We're going to be doing 3 good soil teaching times and teaching through the evangelism and discipleship. As well, then, one of those is going to be to over 100 students at the Bible school there that are going to be taking that training. So we're excited about that. So we get to do that in January. In February, then going to Uganda. So I mentioned Uganda a lot in some of the translations. So those people that have been involved in those translations are the ones that you see there. On the right, top right, is Caleb and Alana Mitchell. And they're hosting us, and he's the one who's translated in Uganda, and I'll be training a bunch of the local pastors that he works with. And then the ones that are down in the bottom, that's Jacob and Carol Lee. They started their own nonprofit organization there in Uganda. It's called Reaching Africa's Unreached, and they're the ones that they live 1 mile from the Sudan border. And so he works with 3 different tribes there, the Sudanese that are on the other side from South Sudan, the Aringa tribe, and then the Mahdi tribe. And so right now he's also, and I just found this out, so it's not on that list that I gave you, but he's now wants to translate the message, the story of hope, because they're the one tribe that isn't Muslim in that area, and translate it into that. But he and his wife were just at the Good Soil training that I did this past week at ABWE, and excited to partner with us They really feel that presenting the gospel in that way, as we do through Good Soil and the chronological, is what's going to reach the people there, especially the Muslims that they're working with. And so I'm going to have the opportunity to train down in the south with Caleb, and then we're not sure if we're doing a 12-hour drive or a flight up to the other place yet, but we're going to do a week there, and I'm going to have the opportunity actually to do the Roots of Faith Old Testament up there with 30 pastors from those 3 different tribal groups, and teach them and do the whole Roots of Faith with them up there for a week, and then they're going to go out and teach their people. Little update on family. So Victoria and Drew, Victoria and Drew got married 1 year ago today. So they're celebrating their 1-year anniversary today. And they are doing well. They're at our home church, Granville, there, and involved in all sorts of ministry. Victoria's working as a cardiothoracic nurse at Spectrum Hospital there in Grand Rapids. And they are giving us our first grandbaby in March. So March 18th, she's due with a baby boy. So we're excited about that. Elena is in 2 weeks going out to ABWE, and she has decided that God is calling her as a missionary back to Brazil. So she was just able to spend 2.5 weeks down there here in September and down in Brazil. So she went back to where she grew up, was able to visit. Her best friends are still down and visit, but then talk to the missionaries and see how she would best fit in there. And so she's going to go down and be a church planting assistant down there. What she's leaning towards is where we had started our retreat center down there in a little town called Lomba Grande. They're now planting a church work in that. And what they want to do is during the week have a community center at the camp, at the retreat center there. And Elena has her master's in social work and her social work license. And being a Brazilian, when she goes back to Brazil, she's checked into all this, she can transfer her license to Brazil. So then she would actually be a social worker on staff there, which would give them a lot more credibility and things that they would be able to do as a community center. So that's kind of what she's leaning towards when she first goes there. So if she contacts you, you'll know why. She's going to start raising support as well. So we're excited that God is calling her back, though. So she will be a 4th-generation missionary. And Joel Richner, who was our colleagues there, he's also going back. And the 2 of them are 4th-generation missionaries that are going back to that area of Brazil to work there, which is exciting. And people have asked, well, what about the 2 of them getting together? She would kill them. They're more like brother and sister. So Lucas has a lot more hair now than in this picture. But he is going to Grand Valley State University studying English education. Decided he wants to be an English and a history teacher. And so he's in his 3rd year of school. He did 2 years at community college, and he's going to school there and working full-time right now at BioLife as well as a phlebotomist. And then Zachary is our just-turned 17-year-old. Just yesterday in the mail, got his slip of paper that says you've gone from level 2 to level 3 driver's license, which means he doesn't have to be home at 11 anymore while he's driving. But I didn't tell him he got that yet, so we'll see how the next few weeks go. He's at Granville High School as a junior. Just finished his soccer season on Wednesday, and was really looking. I think he's interested more like in construction, that kind of thing. He goes part of his day to classes, and the other part he goes to Kent County Technical Center and is taking applied construction there. So that's our family, and you can be praying for them. So we have a few minutes, and I thought I would open it up for questions. Yes. Yes, you can. If we have them, most of them we have some at ABWE. So if you go to the Good Soil website and then hit, if you hit resources, the first one that comes up is the Story of Hope book. And then there'll be a tab there that says translations. You just click on that and it'll give you all the translations, and so you can click on one of those and order it that way. Yes? They could. Do you want the tech guys to show you how to do that online? They could probably. They live with her. So this is true. They can help you out. Any other questions? So the training in Africa will be in English. So Zambia, they do all their Zambia speaks English, so that'll be good. And the other places, the 30 pastors that are going to be up north in Uganda all speak English enough and read well enough. And then the idea is we'll train them in English, but then they'll go out and do it in their tribal languages. The one that we'll do in down south will actually be translated. So I'll speak, and then somebody will translate it into Luganda. Yes? So that's some of the things that people are starting to work on. So for example, in Spain, or in Spanish-speaking South America, they're already doing some of the training on Zoom. You know, the biggest difficulty is, and you guys that have been through our training, and even as you do, those who do Dad's Roots of Faith class, right? It's very interactive. And so it's hard to replicate that online and in Zoom. But we're working through that, doing what we can. Our Live Global team at ABWE is a different arm, and but they have people that just work on tech stuff. They're developing a story of hope that will just be an app that people can work through, and you could be halfway across the world, and they could have it, and you can have it, and the questions will come up, and the verses will come up, and that'll all be on an app is what they're working on. And different in Togo, there's a guy who through the hospital there got saved in Story of Hope, the Message of Hope, and he's actually now recording it in a story format for them to put on the radio. So it's going to be kind of like a story format that they're going to transmit on the radio up there in the Muslim area of Togo. So all those kind of things are being worked on in different areas, yeah. But the idea is once we have the Story of Hope in an app form, and then even the Message of Hope, then it'll be easy to do that into other languages, is what I'm told. I don't know any of this, but this is what I'm told. Yes. So for example, John, he has people in Iran, and so sometimes there are things they do online, and that kind of stuff is monitored. And so the Sow and Harvest is just a website that anybody can go to, but it doesn't have any link or trace back to ABWE. So it protects the people that are there, but also, like for example, we do have ABWE missionaries working in those places. But then it protects them as well.
Are there hostilities towards Christianity in some of those areas?
Yes. So one of the guys that went to Quito, for example, and accepted the Lord there, got baptized, went back to Iran, he was an engineer and a chemical engineer there. And just this last week, his boss found out that he was a Christian, and so he sacked him, lost his job, and they face those kind of things. And sometimes worse, right? Some places death, so in Iran as well. Yes, Pastor? Mm-hmm. Yep. So, like, for one, I shared the one in Colombia, right, where they decided let's do a Zoom because we can't meet. And really what it has done is the people, especially our nationals that are in these countries, they've realized that they need to be well versed and be able to do the training themselves, because they don't know if we'll ever be able to get back to and that kind of stuff because of COVID and other things. And so it's led for the opportunity for them really to be more on board. So a lot of our national partners are doing a lot more than they did before, which is exciting to see. And so they realize, hey, so I spend sometimes, and the goal is to spend each semester some time online with each of our partners and help them work through with what they need so that they can do their job better. The hard part is so open doors are mostly where Good Soil already is, it's flourishing. And I'll share another great story this morning during the message that I left out because it kind of fits into my message of things that are happening when they're in the Philippines. So where Good Soil already is, the people have invested more in it because they see it as the way to continue the ministry, even though we can't be there. The harder part is where it's not yet, right? So to get it in there. But hey, God's beginning to open doors, and as I can travel, I will do that. So hopefully, besides Uganda and Zambia, hopefully this year, besides the thing that we're going to do in Thailand, then there's also the possibility of maybe Indonesia, Taiwan, and I'm missing one, South Africa. Thanks, Dad. We were actually supposed to go to South Africa last year in August and do 3 weeks in 3 different locations that got canceled. And they're one of the ones that got hit worse by COVID, so that's taken a little longer. But hopefully in the second half of the year, we'll be able to get to South Africa as well. Yes? Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in my message, but I appreciate it. Really, it's initiating conversations with people, right? And so as you're talking with people, the opportunities come up sometimes to get deeper into spiritual talks. And what I have found is that even though some people are hostile, most people are hungry for something. And so one of the best ways that I found, even in the Grand Rapids area there and with the young adults kind of that we've been working with kind of as our ministry, is I asked them, there's something that's really helped me, and it's understanding the redemptive, the message of the Bible. And would you like to just study the message of the Bible, study the story, get an understanding of what the Bible teaches from the beginning to end, so that then you can make that decision for yourself. And so, and there's different ways to do that, right? There's the booklets. There's actually a shorter version, which is the one that Sarah gave out, that's the story of hope. If people know a little bit more already about it, that's a good place to start. If they don't know anything about the Bible, the bigger, more complete story. But then that version there is also a free app. If you go to the App Store and type in Good Soil, you can get an app, and it gives you the events as well as the chronological bridge to life, which kind of takes you through the 8 gospel truths of God, man, sin, death, Christ, cross, faith, life. But really, it's just developing relationships with people to the point to where they trust you, and then saying, hey, the thing that's been the most impactful in my life is understanding God's message to us through the Bible. And there, in the last few years that we've been here, I've asked probably between 11 to 12 people if they wanted to study that with me. And of those 11 to 12, one said no. So the rest said yes. So even if half say no and half say yes, right, then you're already having that opportunity to share with a number of people. Does that help at all? Okay. Thank you. we are at 10:30. So we want to thank you for your support of our ministry. God is doing amazing things and bringing people to faith all around the world through Good Soil and its ministry, and we're thankful for that. So let me close in a quick word of prayer, and then we'll go to our break between this and service. Father, we are grateful for you and for your word and for your love for us and for the opportunity to have this wonderful relationship with Calvary Baptist Church that we have. Thankful for their ministry in my life and the lives of our family all through these years. And I just pray that you will continue to guide and to bless them. Pray that you would give them opportunities to share the wonderful message of Jesus Christ. And I thank you for what you are doing around the world and for the lives that are being transformed. And just pray that you'll continue to give us the privilege to be working in that and promoting that. And we ask all this in Jesus' name, amen.